If there was a moment in this movie where you are like, oh yes, I am watching a Marvel movie, the moment that razor comes out is definitely that. If this was a 3-act structure to this fight scene, this would be the Act 1 turn. That's the moment that the hits the fan. Hi, my name is Destin Daniel Cretton. I am the director of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and this is Notes on a Scene.
You have the wrong guy. Does he look like he can fight? Come on, bro.
This scene from the very beginning was an exercise in upping the stakes of a fight sequence. And when I initially pitched this to Marvel, it was just a lot of what if scenarios. What if instead of just a one-on-one fight, there were 6 to 10 assassins fighting Shang-Chi? What if instead of them being in a park, they were on a bus? And then what if the brakes of that bus went out and they were careening down a very steep hill in San Francisco?
You have the wrong guy. Does he look like he can fight? Come on, bro.
In a Marvel movie, you never know what's real and what's fake. Some of these polls are fake and put in after the fact to give us some space for the physical moves that were happening. Everything outside these windows, fake. This, very real. I mean, she played it so convincingly that we were all scared right after the take. Everyone was asking if she was okay, and she said she was fine, thank goodness. We were all like, oh my gosh, was that real? And she was like, it was kind of real. It actually really works for the scene because everybody gets jolted into the violence of this push. It makes Shang-Chi's next reaction very warranted. Love this expression. Awesome. This moment, I believe it was shot at 120 frames per second, which makes it very slow. One of our action designers, Chris Cohen, came up with this moment. That's one of the things when you see an action sequence like this, it's the brainchild of a whole lot of talented people coming up with different moves and constantly exploring the physical space and trying to come up with moments that would be memorable. I think every choreographer on our team has their hands in this sequence in some one moment or another.
You okay?
A lot of character beats in this movie are told through just 2 people looking at each other. Shang-Chi is through his eyes saying sorry, and Katie is saying something like. So this is kind of the first moment that Katie sees that her entire relationship with this dude who she considered her best friend was potentially a lie. The other important thing that we wanted for this moment is for people to really know how much they care about each other, how much Shang-Chi cares about her. So that's why after this says, "Are you okay?" I wasn't hired to direct this movie because I have a lot of experience in action. What I pitched them was a family drama and a character-driven story that was wrapped in a kung fu movie and a martial arts film and a superhero movie. And so it was really important, even in the midst of a big action-packed sequence like this, to find these key beats where we are reminded of the emotions between the characters of who Shang-Chi is. So there's 3 shots in a row, and each of those were choreographed by a different one of our choreographers who are all trying to explore how to use Shang-Chi's reversible jacket. This is kind of the first reveal that it is a reversible jacket. You know, they went through a bunch of different creative ways to do a jacket gag, which was an inspiration from our hero, Jackie Chan. My favorite things about Jackie Chan fights are the setting and the props, and how he uses both of them very strategically to create a very clear narrative. And that was also one of the main things that we talked about with our incredible stunt team, was how we can really utilize every inch of the space of this bus in creative ways, and use all of the props that we had available to us on this bus. And this jacket was one of those props, and this became a very memorable moment.
Yo, what up, y'all? It's your boy Clev coming at you live on the bus. I actually did take a little bit of martial arts as a youth, so I'm gonna try and grade this fight as we're going.
The way that we shot him was just really just letting him improvise like a ton. But this turns out to be a very important story element, because what he is recording on the cell phone is a setup to people knowing who Shang-Chi is. This was probably our most technically complicated sequence to shoot, because we shipped 2 of these huge accordion buses out to Sydney, Australia from California. One of the buses was meant for whenever the bus was on level ground and it could shake and move. And then another bus was on a mechanical gimbal that was 20 feet up in the air and was able to go at a 45-degree angle, shake, twist, turn, and do everything that we needed the bus to do as it was careening down the hills of San Francisco. We shot this scene for about a month, and I really commend these incredible actors. I'm gonna put hearts here because I love them so much, because every day for a month they would show up, climb 20 feet into the air into this claustrophobic barf machine, and somehow do believable performances over and over and over. I actually went up into this thing for about 2 minutes and thought I was going to throw up on people. And I smiled and said, "You guys are doing a great job," and I got the hell off that thing.
Who are you?
One of the beauties of this process is we have the time to edit our footage together and realize that we need certain character beats. And we were able to go back into the plates and reshoot Katie. This shot was Katie on a green screen that we put into this plate. This was shot in Los Angeles. The rest of the interior of the bus was shot in Sydney. And everything outside the bus was shot in San Francisco, all to make this one shot. So during the choreography process of trying to figure out what all of the action beats are for this movie, what nobody anticipated was how big Florian is. Here's Florian. He was about an inch from the ceiling of the bus, and there were many times when he would just give a little hop and hit the ceiling. It actually made the choreo that they had created much more difficult, but thank goodness Florian actually is a professional boxer, and he's an extremely physical human being. His size in this space made all of his moves much more fun to watch.
You got this, bro. My bad.
If there was a moment in this movie where you are like, oh yes, I am watching a Marvel movie, the moment that razor comes out is definitely that. If this was a 3-act structure to this fight scene, this would be the Act 1 turn. That's the moment that the stakes are very raised, and the shit hits the fan. What we actually had here when we were shooting was a green sleeve that Florian wore on his arm, and it had this long, flexible wand that came out of it, like a rubber dangly wand that was ridiculous because it kept flopping around every time he would swing, which made it really hard for Simu to keep a straight face, because what Simu's actually looking at here is not a scary razor, but a floppy, weird, dangly thing that looks like a noodle. This is a great example of the VFX team working very closely with our physical production team. This is real and everything else is fake. We shot all of the action that's taking place inside the bus on our stage, and as the camera moves in towards the bus at the moment that Razorfist breaks that window, that's when we're actually back into the reality of what we're shooting. But everything else here is a combination of real plates and VFX that Chris and his team worked tirelessly on the entire post-process to get it to this point. One of the greatest joys of this process was working with Bill Pope, who many might know was the director of photography for some incredible movies like the entire Matrix trilogy. He is such a smart man and really so good at finding creative ways to shoot action and light action. In this sequence, he and our incredible gaffer, Reg, put together a lighting grid that was constantly moving. So everything outside of the bus, this is all green screen. So, we're on a stage and everything out here is blue. We had lighting on this track that was zooming around the bus to emulate the way that the shadows would be flying through this bus as it was going down through the city streets of San Francisco. This stunt was initially choreographed by one of our great stunt performers named Jesse. He came up with this little run, and this was kind of the first time that we saw what Simu was capable of, and it's not easy what he's doing, because he's not only doing this acrobatics, but he has to stay in coordination with making sure that he is close enough to Razorfist's swings to make it look realistic, and also coordinating with all of these extras to make sure he's not elbowing anybody in the face. This was one of the moments I talked about in my initial pitch to Marvel that was, one possible example of upping the stakes of a sequence. If the brakes go out and the bus driver goes down, what if Shang-Chi has to get up and start driving the bus and fending off his assailants while he's trying to drive the bus? And it's really crazy to me to watch it and see that it actually is up on a screen.
Go, you freak!
This is another example of a great use of props that our stunt coordinators were utilizing everything that we had available to us. In one of the previous shots that we're looking at, you get kind of the setup of that there's this fire extinguisher up on the wall. And if anybody noticed that, of course someone's going to end up grabbing it and hitting Razorfist on the head with it. This was not real, but it did have enough solidity to it to give a realistic reaction from Florian.
Go, you freak!
Anytime that we're outside of of the bus, our second unit was shooting in San Francisco, getting all these exterior shots. They had a bus full of extras that mimic the extras that we had in Sydney. And all of these shots had to be coordinated with all of the stunts that we shot in Sydney. Just before this, when we are inside this bus, everything outside the bus, all of these buildings, everything had to be shot on plates right after this moment so that we could project them onto the green screens on the inside of our vehicle. So when we are inside doing all those stunts, we want to make sure that the background matches everything here. I really wanted to just demolish a bunch of these scooters, which has been a fantasy of mine for a very long time. I'm not a fan of these scooters. This is just an important story point. We wanted to make sure that all of our innocent bystanders are getting pushed to the back half of the bus in this one shot. This becomes the setup for the final act of our sequence where Shang-Chi sees an opportunity to get all of the people who are in trouble from the back half of the bus to the front half of the bus and get rid of all the bad guys by getting rid of the back half of the bus. This is a cool gag that our stunt team created. Was we shot this on a stage, but there was a treadmill that they put down here. So these tires were fake tires, but there was a treadmill here that was flying really fast, and every time his feet hit, it was able to create the effect that his feet were skidding along the ground, and he was trying to regain his balance. I think it worked pretty well. This was actually a pretty important character beat for us to see that Katie here and Shang-Chi here are instinctually working together, that there is a cause and effect happening from Katie's driving and what Shang-Chi needs. She turns the bus very quickly in the next shot. The gravitational pull of that turn allows for Shang-Chi to flip up onto the top of the bus, and simultaneously has Razor Fist and his goons thrown back to the other side of the bus. We really wanted some moment in this movie to see that without really even trying, these two are a team. Open the door, please! We wanted to create a moment where it felt like it was going to be a big, giant Marvel superhero moment, and ends with just a silly slam into a door. This was not an easy stunt, and Simu practiced quite a bit to make sure that he could do this. And it was pretty important for us because it's all done in a oneer. And the camera's swinging around this way and ends in a close-up here of Simu, which is why we really hoped that Simu could pull this off. And he runs from back here, runs along, jumps off, grabs onto this. I'm gonna draw him grabbing on. There he is. And here's his feet. Is that a foot? Here's another foot. He grabs onto this, he swings around, it's his big hero moment, and then splat into the door. And if you watch Simu's facial performance, it's extremely convincing that he believes he's gonna blast through that door. This performance, to me, is money. It really feels like he has his eye on the prize and that he is just going to shatter this door and make a grand entrance. And that's not what happens. Any movie that I've ever worked on starts with an idea that I have in my head, and in this case, it was just the seed of an idea of a fight that takes place on a runaway bus that has no brakes, that is careening down the hills of San Francisco. What I love about the final product of this scene is seeing how many creative brains have put their stamp on this scene. And it's one of the most collaborative efforts of our movie. To be able to work with all of these teams and try to keep this thing cohesive was a challenge, but extremely satisfying to watch in the end.